Hello and welcome to Restore 2022. We've just finished the book of 1 Samuel, and by reading the first two chapters of Amos today, it looks like we're missing a big chunk of the history of David's and Solomon's reigns as kings. We're going to come to this, guys, shortly in our readings, but we are in that part in the history of God's people where the following death of Solomon, actually 150 years before the days of Amos, Israel has been divided in two regions, actually. The southern kingdom called Judah, and this included the great city of Jerusalem, and the north region, which was called named Israel, or sometimes referred as Ephraim or Samaria. And Samaria was the main city here of the northern kingdom. Amos prophesied while Uzziah was on the throne of Judah and Jeroboam II was the king of Israel. So around 750 years before Christ. Most of the Old Testament prophets, they're working, they're prophesying, they're delivering God's messages to the kingdom of Judah. But there are only two specific prophets. It's Amos and Hosea, which were sent to the north region, while Micah and Isaiah were serving in the south. So Amos opens with this oracle of judgment against Israel's neighbors. The prophets used oracles against the nations to emphasize Yahweh's judgment coming on Israel's enemies. And it may well have been that the people of Israel were they felt a little bit smug when they heard that Amos was warning all these other nations of God's wrath against them, and rubbing their hands. Rejoicing over the enemy's misery. But if this was the case, then God's people were being really foolish. Because the next is the charge against Judah, as we read in chapters 1 and 2. It's the short of these 8 oracles. And again, they should have known better. But one thing that God has got against Judah is that they have rejected the law of the Lord, and they have not kept his commandments, his decrees. And then it deals with Israel. The prophet addresses the corruption. And when I say Israel, is the northern kingdom. The lack of compassion of the behavior of their judges. They sell the righteous for silver, the needy for a pair of sandals, verse 6. And those who were rich behaved as they wanted, as they wished, without being questioned, challenged. Whereas the poor were sold into slavery because of their debts that was so small, as cheap as a pair of sandals. Secondly, the prophet Amos is exposing Israel's idolatry, engaging with religious activities manifested in sexual immorality, in wine, and muting the prophets when they knew exactly what the Lord required of them. True worship of God should come from our hearts and automatically impacts both our personal lives and our social structures. And when it fails to do so, then it's not worship of God.